Support for the Leadoff on WGLT and WGLT.org comes from the Central Illinois Regional Airport, where Florida beaches are one flight away. Featuring nonstop service on Allegiant Airlines to Tampa, St. Pete, and Orlando Sanford from Bloomington. Close, convenient, CIRA. More at CIRA.com.
A national advocate comes to Normal and says the push for climate policy is a marathon, not a sprint, especially now. It's one of the things you need to know to start your day for Thursday, September 18th. I'm Ryan Denham, and this is WGLT's The Leadoff. Now let's lead off with a Hispanic Heritage Celebration in Bloomington that saw lower attendance and participation this year. As WGLT correspondent Cindy Alcazar reports, concerns about ICE raids kept them away from the annual gathering at St. Mary's Catholic Church.
Event organizer Griselda Joaquin says some food vendors canceled their participation out of caution.
I'm sorry that they feel that way, and I'm sorry that they're put in that position. And I don't want to put them in a position where they feel that they can't come here to church and they can't enjoy something that's for the whole community. But it's nothing that I can do about it. It's not me. It's the leader of this country that's putting us in this position right now.
Bloomington Police's Community Engagement Officer, Sergeant Kyle Nowers, was present at the event. Joaquin says the community appreciates the department's presence.
He's always been friendly with our community. He's always been open, welcoming. They love having him here. The kids love having him here. The parents always bring the kids to see him here.
Nowers says the city's Hispanic community has expressed less confidence in using police services since the federal government has increased immigration enforcement.
We cannot control what the federal government is going to do, but what we can do is control how they feel and how they work with local law enforcement and letting them know the boundaries of where we will and we will not cooperate with ICE and the federal government and those things, so they know that that they still deserve the same protections and the same service that everyone else does.
Nowers says he wants the Hispanic community to feel safe when reporting crimes to the department. Joaquin says St. Mary's Kermes is a staple celebration and takes months of planning. This year's event featured a traditional chichimeca dance performed by members of the congregation in remembrance of the Virgin of Guadalupe. I'm Cindy Alcazar.
Here's some other stories we're following in the WGLT newsroom. House Speaker Chris Welch says state lawmakers are prioritizing plans to give Illinoisans relief from rising energy prices. Speaking during a stop at Bloomington, Welch says the best plan would include ways to increase energy supplies. Illinois will release a new round of federal funding to build electric vehicle charging stations. That includes nearly $1 million for chargers at Eric's 2 Family Restaurant and Lounge near the interchange of Interstate 55 and 74 in Bloomington. And about a week of road work, milling of asphalt specifically, begins Monday along Oakland Avenue between Eldorado Road and Hershey Road, Washington Street from Veterans to Hershey, and Prospect Road from Oakland to Empire, all in Bloomington. You can find more on these stories at WGLT.org. While it may be more challenging to implement climate policy under the Trump administration, the fight is far from over. It's according to a national environmental advocate. Former president of the environmental group the Sierra Club, Ramón Cruz, came to ISU this week. He tells WGLT student reporter Ben Howell how climate policy persists through political opposition.
When you're an advocate, often you have to kind of like gear up or train for a marathon. And not only, it's not a sprint. Otherwise, you can get very frustrated because you have ups and downs. No, but there is a progressive move, even if in this moment many of the things that were achieved in the last 50 years are being dismantled. The consciousness of many people are still there. So you may be on a down moment now, but that doesn't mean that knowledge is gone.
Climate policy, it doesn't always tend to poll well, and even among those who believe in climate change, it's sometimes not even their biggest priority. The Inflation Reduction Act under the Biden administration, it was changed. It maybe didn't even reflect that it was such a big piece of climate legislation, because sometimes you need to make it more palatable. What is the strategy for that, or why do politicians maybe sometimes have to do that?
The reality is that it doesn't have to be only about climate. Because the issue is about the economy, It's about the future that we want to live in. It's about, the values that we want to build an economy based on. And so right now, the world has, we're at a moment that it's very similar to where the U.S. was 150 years ago or a bit more, when the engine of the economy was supposed to be slavery. And at that moment, it got to a point that morally we couldn't really hold that. But not only morally, but also the economy was ready for a change. And it was only when slavery was abolished that it unleashed a period of innovation that became known as the Industrial Revolution, where fossil fuels was key to be able to engine that change.
How should electric vehicles plan into a climate policy strategy? And do you think the industry can survive without their subsidies now in the short or the long term?
In part of the Inflation Reduction Act, you had a $7,500 tax credit for new vehicles, $4,000 for used vehicles. That we know that electric vehicles can last longer. So there is a big market for used cars, and that was very good. But yeah, when the Trump administration got rid of those incentives, then we saw already that Rivian announced then layoffs, and took 200 employees. Those are 200 salaries and families that are, receiving less in this area. And so you have the other big companies like General Motors, also GM, announcing similar things. And so it is very unfortunate, because that is something that was going to power a lot of that transition, and that was going to make people less dependent on oil, much more, have cars that are much more efficient, and it was going to be better, in the long run.
How do you get people in the Midwest region to really see and understand the potential impacts of climate change when they might think it's more of like a coastal issue and they're nestled here inland? They don't think it might affect them. How do you get them to see that and understand it better?
It doesn't have to be a coastal issue. The wind potential that the Midwest has, it's huge, and that's why when you think of the wind energy production, that was the incentives that were there under the Inflation Reduction Act benefited the Midwest the most. Illinois is actually fifth on the wind energy production, but Texas, Iowa, Oklahoma, Kansas come before Illinois. That's all in these regions. So it is not about climate. It's about what makes economic sense. And for this region, it makes much more economic sense to be putting windmills all over and generating what would be not only renewable, but free.
That was Ramón Cruz speaking with WGLT student reporter Ben Howell. Cruz visited ISU as part of a speaking event for students interested in a career in advocacy. And before we let you go, the Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission meets today at 5 at the library. On the agenda are plans to demolish a 138-year-old home on Emerson Street, just east of the Illinois Wesleyan campus. And that is it for today. I'm Ryan Denham. You can subscribe to the Leadoff on the NPR app or wherever you listen.